So we'll start this off in a second. All right, welcome to our course. It's GDD403, problem solving with data structures and algorithms. And it says week 1 here, but really we're week 3. So welcome to the course, and I'll talk about some of the challenges that we're going to have this semester as we're going to play a little bit of catch up because we missed a couple of weeks of class together. So let's start with this. Who am I? And of course I spelled Canador college wrong, right? Canador. It would be nice to say my email address the right way. Wow, what a great start. Yeah, so my name is Tom, and I've been teaching for a long time, a bit of time anyway, since 2011, so about 12 years. I'm got a lot of experience in software engineering, game dev, and in fact, I teach at a couple of colleges right now, other colleges. So I'm also teaching at George Brown College in Toronto, as well as Centennial College in Toronto. I've taught at Ontario Tech University, also in the game dev program there, and a bunch of other places. So again, it's not a new thing. It's the great thing about why I'm a teacher is because, especially when it comes to game dev, I love games. I love game design, especially. And one thing that I do a lot is, like it says here, I've been playing Dungeons and Dragons before Dungeons and Dragons was a popular thing way back. I'm an old guy. Warhammer 40K is a thing for me as well. And I'm also developing a brand new sci-fi tabletop role-playing game called Bloodstar Plasmagory. So that is something that I'm working on right now. And that's a little bit about me. Stuff to talk about when it comes to the way I do things. Although I have PowerPoints, there are going to be times when I'm not going to read them. It's just going to be there for reference, mostly for you. If you need to refer to something that I put up there, a term or something like that. But for the most part, I will talk to the PowerPoints. I'll use them as framing the lecture, but I'm not going to be reading them very much, at least not exactly. I find that boring to watch, and I'm sure you find that boring to listen to. So what is this course? It's all around, I would say, solving problems, like it says here, with some kind of design pattern. All right. Now we can call them data structures and algorithms or whatever. And that was the old course that I took way back when I first learned how to program. And it's the same name that it was before. It hasn't changed, right? It's almost like I would say a fundamental course that you would all take as programmers if you're just starting to learn how to program. So it's a key course. Course resources that I'm using, they're a little bit old, and this is part of your outline, but they're okay. They're still good. C# hasn't changed a lot. And data structures haven't changed a lot in terms of the way they're going. So I'm referring to a couple books here that you can probably acquire. One of them is this Data Structures and Algorithms Using C#, Michael McMillan, and the other one is this other one, which I like to use, Data Structures and Algorithms for Game Developers, which is more relevant to you. I believe this one is written in C++, but you guys should be familiar with both C++ and C# from what I'm understanding, right? So that shouldn't be a problem. Again, forgive me if I say something that's incorrect because I don't know your program. Please stop me and let me know. How will we evaluate you in this course? So what I do normally is I run a series of in-class exercises starting with today. We don't have a lot of time together, and each in-class exercise, quote unquote, usually we do something together. Some people call them labs in different institutions. They call them different things. And so these will kind of be our labs every single time we get together. I kind of flow things when I teach into a lecture lab format. So I don't just do like all PowerPoints and that's it, and then see you later, and then show you code, or give you something to do and say bye-bye. We don't do that. I code with you. A lot of times I may have a reference, sometimes I won't. And when I don't have a reference, we get into some troubleshooting or some, stuff that happens when you code live, all kinds of stuff happens, which is a good thing actually. So in-class exercise, I'm going to take the best 8 of 9. Normally in a regular structure, if I was going to start with you from week 1, we would have a couple of additional ones. I'll probably have, instead of 9, I would have 11 or something, and then I would take the best 8 out of 11. So you'd have a chance to not do 1 or 2. So here, each in-class exercise is meaty. Okay, so I don't believe in in-class exercises that are like 1%. That is completely useless. So I'm giving you 4% each. So today's class worth 4% of your final grade together. So every single time we get together, 4% of your final grade. If you miss a class, I will record it, of course. And as long as you submit on the Sunday when all the in-class exercises are due, you're good to go. There are no extensions. So basically you have from the time we get together on Friday to Sunday to submit. And it shouldn't be something that's going to take you more time then we're doing things in class. You should be able to finish everything together, almost like homework in class together is what I want to try and do. It's us practicing together, the concepts that the lecture kind of touches upon, and getting you up to speed with the stuff that I would like you to do. And as long as you get those things done, we're good to go. Each in-class exercise requires a lab report, which is something that we're going to do together. And I'll explain how that works. It's not that difficult. I know it sounds scary sometimes, lab report, but it's not really that crazy. And then there's going to be 4 assignments starting with this week. I'm going to give you the assignment. I'm not quite done tweaking it yet. I'll probably release it later today or tomorrow. You'll have access to it for the time that you're going to do it. I may record a video and attach it later on and talk about what the assignment's about and what I'm expecting and all that kind of stuff. Typically for the first assignment, it's a me getting to know you kind of assignment and what you can do. That's why it's rated a little lower. You also have only a couple weeks to get it done. So it's between now and week 5. We'll talk about that. And then there's a few other assignments. Each assignment is going to be aligned with the stuff we're talking about in class. So the in-class exercises, the code we're going to share together on GitHub is all the stuff that you're going to be able to use for your in-class exercise, for your assignments. We're going to have 2 tests, a midterm test and a final test. The midterm tests and the final test are both practical. Okay, so there's no true, false, multiple choice in my course. I don't do that kind of stuff. That's, in my opinion, for programmers, absolutely useless. I know it's opinionated, and I know that there's a place for true, false, multiple choice. There is, but not in our courses, especially now with ChatGPT and everything else that's out there. So, it's good for it to go through your brain. True, false, multiple choice type tests, they go through, because the knowledge goes through your brain a couple times, but realistically, you need to know what to do. And so I'll give you a practical assignment. It's almost like a test assignment. You'll get the entire week to do it. I'll usually release the test on the Monday, and you'll have until the Friday to get it done. So you have 5 days to do the test. It won't be like, I won't put a lot of pressure on you in day. We'll meet on the Friday. If I release it on the Monday, we'll meet on the Friday and we'll talk about it. And if you have any issues throughout the week, or even on the Friday, we can discuss the test. I'll go through the kind of expectations and all those kind of things. It'll be the same for both the midterm test and the final test. All right. So there's not going to be a change in terms of how we're going to do it. Again, whole week, you get the whole week to get it done. And everything that you see here is individual. There's no group work. Okay. So it's not like you're going to work with somebody else and you're going to have to do pair programming or any of that stuff. It's just you. Okay. So that's a good thing. And the reason why is then you can learn the data structure that we're going to be covering, fairly well. Okay. Questions around this or concerns? Please pipe up. This is way better when we have a conversation compared to if I'm just seeing a bunch of black screens. We're going to be using you can also use a student license, but the Pro Unity license is not required. I'll talk about the Unity kind of version we're going to use. I'll talk about that, but no, you don't use the Pro version is not required at all. Right. Ryan's good. Okay, good. Let's continue. So this is the structure. And then just in terms of our outline. So, okay, sorry about that, Justin. We'll fix it. This is our outline, and it's a topical outline that I want to kind of, it'll cover all of our key points for the course, learning outcomes. It'll kind of hit all the learning outcomes for us, right? So again, this week is all around course orientation, tools, collections, generics. There's a timing class we'll kind of look at. And we're going to be talking about a couple things. We'll create a starter project today and explore some collections that we're going to be using. And then we're going to continue with that. So it's more like an introductory week, more than anything else, although you should have had this like 2 weeks ago. And there's some things that I do that are different with Git and GitHub. And again, I'm just putting up my hand. How are you guys familiar with Git and GitHub? Are you guys good? And what I'm asking is, do you have repositories? Do you have a GitHub account? Yes or no?
Yeah, we do. It was part of our first year.
That's great. Fantastic. Do you use GitHub? Okay. Do you use GitHub regularly? Oh, but that's the next question I have to ask.
I don't personally. It doesn't look like anyone else does either.
So no. As of this course, you guys are going to be GitHub experts. All right. My expectation is to use GitHub for everything going forward. And I mean it, everything. For this, for Unreal, for Unity, for whatever you do as developers. Without a source control system or some kind of version control, that's not how we do things in the real world in any way. Doesn't matter whether you're in software engineering at a bank or doing game dev, there's always some kind of source control system. So that is going to be integrated within our course. I also expect you guys to do command line. So although, because you guys are, I think it's 4th semester, yeah? So, and now there's other things to do. I'm going to talk about command line, but we're also going to be, I will allow you to put it up on GitHub any way you like. If you want to use a tool like GitHub Desktop, if you want to use SourceTree, Gitkraken, or the integrated tool in Visual Studio somehow, that's okay too, right? But I'm going to show you command line. I'll be talking about command line the entire time, and I'm going to review Git and GitHub my way today. So that way you guys are clear on what it is, how it works, and the whole thing, since you haven't used it so often. Okay. So that's what we're going to be doing as part of our in-class exercise today. And part of it is making sure that your GitHub account is working properly, all that kind of stuff, making private repos, sharing them with me only, and that kind of stuff. Okay, so that's kind of the way we're going to be doing stuff with Git and GitHub. Thank you for that feedback, though. That's good. So at least I know where you're at with that kind of stuff. So that's today. Today's that opening up Unity 2022.2. So if you haven't had a chance to do that already, I kind of posted it, but the version that we're using, and I'm just going to kind of go up here in the download archive. Here's the version. It may not be available in Unity Hub. And the reason why I'm using this version, I'm going to use 2022.2.1 is the one that I want you guys to download with Unity Hub. That's the same version I'm using everywhere this semester, right? So this way we're all on the same page. I've got you on the same page as everybody else, and I'm not going to juggle between two versions. So that's kind of I'm sorry, but it's a little bit selfish on my part, but I'm trying to tell you that this is why I'm doing it. Also, the other thing is that between the versions, the minor versions, 2022.1 or 2 or 3, there's very little difference in terms of bug fixes as we go forward with Unity. And if there is something that is a bug that we find, then we'll all change. That means me and you and everybody else that I'm working with this semester to the new version, okay? So that's something that, I'm going to ask you guys to do. So while we're waiting, please download, while I'm talking, please download 2022.2.1F1 through Unity Hub. Again, for your license, you can use a personal license, is perfectly fine. And for Unity Hub, which I will go over again with you, I'm using the beta version. And let me talk about why. So if you go to Unity Hub, if you go to Preferences, and if you go to Advanced, I'm using the beta channel. And I find that normally I don't do beta stuff at all. When we talk about programming or whatever, I like to use the stable version. However, I find that Unity's Hub, the beta version of Unity's Hub, is really great, and it gives you additional features and those kind of things that we'll be using throughout the course. So please download or update your Unity hub if you need to. And when you install your Unity, and there's always a thing to do, I want you to install, we're primarily working on a Windows environment or PC environment. So you need Windows support. And I also am going to ask you to install WebGL support. So that's also an install option. So that is something that I want you guys to do. So again, if I was to go install editor, you know, as an example, you can see here that there isn't 2022.2.1F1, which is the one I want you to do. You have to go to archive or the link I just gave you. And then when you go there to the download archive, install 2022.2.1F1. Okay, so that's the one I want you guys to download. All right, so so we're working primarily in Unity then. The options for me were purely in Visual Studio. And by the way, just to check, Visual Studio 2022, yes. I'm hoping that that is the version that you're using, not some other version. 2022? Maybe? I need you guys to get 2022. All right, so, okay, good. So if you're using 2019, it's okay. We're not doing C++ with 2019 or anything else, so it should be okay. But Visual Studio 2022 is kind of the standard that they have up here for Unity 2022.2. So it may ask you to download. The community version is perfectly fine, but if you can get your hands on the enterprise version, even better. Okay, so we'll talk about those kind of things as well. We're going to do that. We're also going to be using a tool to help us code. And you're going to be like, wait, what? Some of you. Every place, including Ubisoft, I have my friends at Ubisoft Toronto. They use some kind of visual assisting tool when it comes to coding. And the one we're going to be using is ReSharper from JetBrains. So please, what I need you guys to do is apply for your JetBrains educational license. And if you're not familiar with JetBrains, they're the same people that make Android Studio. And they do a bunch of other stuff. If you're programming Java before, they have a great IDE, IntelliJ. I like it. They have an OK IDE for WebStorm, and all that kind of stuff as well. But they're a great tools company, and they were contracted by Google to replace, you know, their default IDE with Android Studio, and they also wrote their own language, Kotlin, which is something that is going to replace Java eventually for Android development. So they're pretty cool, and they have a developer tool called ReSharper. ReSharper, there's two versions, ReSharper C# and ReSharper C++. And if you download the extension for Visual Studio, it's pretty awesome. It helps you code. It gives you more refactoring tools and even some code hinting when it comes to you coding and so on. I think it's really good. There are two camps about this kind of thing typically. There's the camp that says you shouldn't have any help when you're coding. You should just remember everything. And then there's the other side, that's my side, which is I just want to do things quick and easy. I don't want to remember a damn thing. And the reason for that is because I program in a bunch of languages, and I want my tools to help me code fast, efficiently, prevent errors, and all that kind of stuff, and really boost the standards, coding standards, right? So if I forget to do something a certain way, then the tool is going to say, hey, Tom, you know, you forgot to do things this way. You should probably do this, a suggestion, right? And you can ignore them or not. So please make sure that you sign up for your free educational license for ReSharper. Again, this is all stuff we can do while I'm talking. So by the time we get to our in-class exercise, you've kind of started doing this kind of thing.
Which ReSharper you want me to have?
There's something called ReSharper Ultimate, which is what you're going to do. But first, sign up for your license. ReSharper itself is a proprietary software. It's not free by any means. The only way you can get it is from by getting the free educational license, and then you can install ReSharper, and there'll be instructions on how to do so, I think. But normally what you would do is if you go to your Visual Studio, you can add it as an extension, and then it will add ReSharper to your Visual Studio environment. Okay. So ReSharper Ultimate is what you're going to get. Okay, so tools is what we're doing, right? We're talking about tools. And the other thing is that most of your systems are probably not set up for Git for Windows. And we're going to do that installation together because, and here's the test for you. Can you do, if you pull up your command prompt, try this out for yourself. If you pull up your command prompt, can you do a git minus version? And if the answer is no, and you get an unrecognized command, we need to fix that. So we're going to do that today as well for your Windows system. Okay, so that's something we're going to do. And the good thing about this is it's going to set you up so you can do things on command line. You'll be able to do things with the tool. And one of the challenges that young developers have, yeah, that's fine. As long as you have any Git for Windows, Justin, I'm good. A command prompt is the command line. That's what it is, Matthew. All right, so that's what I just did. So command prompt is if you go down to your, if you're using Windows 10 or Windows 11, it doesn't really matter. If you go here to your start button and just type in command, then it'll bring in, or CMD, you'll bring this up. Okay, that's a command prompt. The command prompt is basically a terminal or a command line, is what we're going to be doing. Okay, but good questions. All right, so we'll be installing that separately later on. So so that is this week, mostly installations, that kind of stuff, getting our starter project going. I will be talking about the layout in Unity and my recommendations, my preferences for that kind of stuff. We'll talk about you know, the project that we're going to be creating and the templates that we're going to be using. Are we going to be using 2D? Are we going to be using 3D? Is there going to be a some kind of starter project that we're going to use for assets that we're going to work with and all that kind of stuff? All those things and more is what we're going to cover today. Okay, so that's a lot. And I'm going to fill in the blanks when it comes to our lab report after we're done. So I don't know how far we're going to get. And I don't know your level of competency with Unity and with all the tools. And I'm going to adjust the lab report to make sure that it's doable for you. Okay, so it's not going to be something that's out of whack. There might be a part that you need to do as well. I might say, here's what we've done together. We've done X part, this big part, and here's a part that you need to do on your own. But it'll be a small part. It'll be something where you just experiment and try things on your own. Okay, so that is what we're doing there. So here we're also going to be talking about next week arrays and lists in more detail. We're going to be creating a list of game objects, and I'll be talking about that. Yeah, that's okay, Ren. And if you even if you don't use it, it's right away. It's okay. Just make sure that it's weird. That's unfortunate, but it is what it is. So don't worry about it. If it takes a couple days for it to go through, you'll have time, and it's not going to affect what I'm expecting. You might just see my Visual Studio work differently than yours. That's all. So I might have extra stuff and suggestions coming up. And yeah, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So again, so that's arrays and lists is what we're covering next week, and other stuff, more collections. And then we're going to get right into sorting algorithms. In week 5, that'll be bubble sort, selection sort, insertion sort, merge sort, and others. And we'll talk about how we can do things in how that makes sense in games, what we'd use them for. I want to try and make it as related to games as possible, because I find that when we learn programming structures and algorithms together as you know, students, the biggest problems that we have as students when we're learning stuff is, how does this make any sense? Why do I need this thing, right? And when am I going to use it? And a lot of times what happens is we don't know what to do with it. We don't use it. That's what happens, right? So so that's the thing. Like, for example, giving you an example with something like an account for a bank makes no sense for you guys, in my opinion. I mean, let's do games. That's what you're here for. So that's why I'm going to be working with you the entire time. So we're going to be doing some sorting game objects, and there's going to be a reason why we're going to sort those game objects when we get there. Sorting, there's a lot of things we can do with sorting to make things more efficient. It's almost like a you know, kind of a pre-step to improve our algorithms later on, the performance of our algorithms, which we're going to be talking about today to some degree. Then we're going to get into searching algorithms and a bit of recursion. Have you guys touched on recursion at all in your program? Did they tell you recursion is bad? I don't know. What did they tell you?
It sounds familiar, but I don't remember anything being stated about that.
Okay. Sounds familiar, but you're not quite sure. So recursion is where it's a technique where we call a method. That's since my programming program. So Justin, you took another program before this. So yeah, so not since when there's different techniques. Is he? There's different techniques that we can use for looping structures, for kind of moving something over and over again, reusing code. And one of them is recursion. And recursion is the ability for us to call the function or method from within that function or method. The function calls itself over and over again. A lot of times, if you don't really hammer down something called the base case, we get into a problem and it can create memory overflow. A lot of times called Stack Overflow, which is where that popular site came from, Stack Overflow. So because it keeps on calling itself forever in an endless loop, right? So that is a looping structure. There's always ways around it. So you don't have to use recursion. You can use a while loop a lot of times to replace the recursive structure, but there's a simplicity, almost an elegance in when you're coding with recursion. Okay, so that's something that we're going to do a little bit about. We're also going to talk about alternatives because there's issues with recursion as well. So that is week 6. Week 7 is our midterm test. We'll be doing, like I said, some kind of little assignment based on the things that we've been doing every week together. And that little assignment is going to be, kind of something that you have for the entire week. There'll be a few tasks that you need to do. And typically when we do a midterm test, just to give you more details or any kind of test, I measure it as if you could do it within class. So if I'm going to get you to do a midterm test, the maximum time it should take you to complete is like 4 hours. If we've got 4 hours for our class, maximum time will be 4 hours, and it'll be less than that because I'm not going to make it 4 hours. And so that means, but you have the whole week to get it done. So you can arrange that with your schedule, how you like. You'll be more relaxed. You can look stuff up. It'll be open book, open internet. You'll have the entire time to do it. And all I want you to do is demonstrate some of the things that we've been talking about in the previous weeks. So say here, okay, now here's let's do more of a comprehensive example. For the things that we've talked about, go ahead, show me this, as an example. So that's coming up on week 7. After that, we'll have a mid-semester break for a week. And that's the week after Family Day, which is February 27th to March 3rd, something like that. And that's this part. That's the first half of semester. The second half is we get more interesting. We talk about stacks and queues when we come back on week 8. We talk about linked lists in week 9, and I tie them into path following. And a lot of times there is something that's going to happen throughout the entire course, which is, like I said, design patterns. Have you guys touched upon design patterns at all in your courses ever? And do you even know what those are? So thanks, Scott. So what we're going to be talking about is design patterns throughout this course as well. And when you go to an interview and they may ask you questions like, what's a singleton? You should know what that is. What's a factory? What's a state machine? You should know these things. Those are all patterns. You may have heard of them already. What's an observer pattern? What's the command pattern? What's the flyweight pattern, and all these kind of things. We're going to be talking about patterns, design patterns throughout the course, like I said, and they're going to complement the data structures and algorithms that we're going to be using and we're going to learn about. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. One of them is I've already targeted for week 8, and there may be others that I put in as well, is the optimization pattern. It's called object pooling, and you guys should know about object pooling. Yes? You guys done object pooling before? Even though you may not know the design pattern, but do you guys know what object pooling is? No. So, and I'll just talk about it briefly since we're talking about it. Think about instantiation and destruction. So if I instantiate an object doesn't matter where, Unreal, Unity, C#, C++, Java, whatever. I instantiate an object, I allocate memory. And when I allocate memory, I make space for the object to be stored. And it's expensive computationally if I do it per frame. So if I do it every frame, I'm instantiating objects, I'm allocating memory on your system. It slows the system down a bit, right? And for most PCs and even consoles, you're not going to really notice a lot of hit at performance. But when it comes to mobile devices, so if you do mobile application development, mobile games as a good example, networking and that kind of stuff, instantiation and destruction is huge, right? Especially if you're doing it like, multiple times a frame. Particle systems as a good example. If you made your own particle system, or you made your own game engine, your own subsystems, those kind of things, right? So that is, we use an optimization pattern called object pooling, and in which we preload all of the objects ahead of time. And then what we do is we reuse them. And we're going to use stacks and queues for this, right? So it's going to come up in week 8. Really exciting about that. Bullet pools are a great example of that. Enemy spawners, all those kind of things are really important, to get right with those kind of things. Linked lists, and there's a design pattern here, the state machine, as well as other things that we're going to be talking about. Decision trees in week 10. So again, if you guys have done any AI, yes. I'm just putting my hand up. I don't know if you guys have done it yet. AI, any kind of AI at all? Could be a yes or no. No. AI was last year, Rin? Okay, good. That's awesome. So if you did AI, is it next year? We haven't done any AI. So I'll be doing all the data structures and algorithms you need for AI. I'll be covering in, for the most part anyway, this semester. You can't do AI advanced, kind of like any kind of advanced algorithm without this stuff. This is foundational, like I said, right? So, okay, that's the last year of school. So yeah, we'll be covering a lot of this already. So then by next time, when you kind of hit formal AI, then you'll have this, you'll have the foundations. You can't really do AI without this kind of stuff that we're talking about, especially binary trees, which is a huge one for programmers. We talk about those. And there's different kinds of decision structures that we're going to be talking about. One of them is the decision tree, right? Example would be, do I have line of sight? Yes. Okay. Fire. No. Go to line of sight, right? There's a decision right now for your AI, right? So, and what is line of sight? Of course, you can use different ways of doing that. A lot of times it's ray casting. Okay, so we can do that. So that is the, binary trees, decision trees. Then there's some sorting and searching algorithms, and we're going to be talking about some simple pathfinding algorithms. We're going to talk about them, and we're going to do it, kind of from scratch a little bit. You'll be revising those things again or revisiting them in your AI course whenever that comes. And your AI professor is going to go through those in way more detail than I will. We're going to be touching upon them and giving small little examples, all right, on how to do those things. I will also talk about the AI that's built into Unity, which is a navigation mesh, that we're going to be talking about as well, because it's just going to be something of interest for us when we look at it. One thing to note is that there will be no lecture on the week of April 7th officially, because our Friday falls on Good Friday. And for many people in Ontario, that means they're off on a religious holiday. It's actually probably the school is going to be closed too, my guess. And so we're not going to be getting together on that day at all that week. So that's something that we're going to lose another week there, where we could have had another in-class exercise and I could have done more stuff with you. But again, we have 4 hours every week. I think we have enough that we can really cover all the outcomes, the learning outcomes for this course. And so we're going to talk about sorting and searching algorithms. And then finally, we're going to get into graph algorithms and networks. Okay, so those are the way we're going. And don't think about networks as in like networks, like computer networks, but rather networks as in structures, that we're going to be talking about. And then finally, our final test is the final week of class. Questions, comments, thoughts, anything about the structure? This is how I would do it. If I had 2 more weeks with you, like I had started earlier, we would just be doing more more stuff like around this kind of thing. So really, I'm not going to say you haven't missed anything. I'm going to say that I've tried to rebalance the course that I would have done with you guys over the weeks that we have. Okay, that's kind of what I've done. Okay. Yeah, I mean, well, you need the plugin. I'm not going to tell you need the plugin at all. I recommend it. Justin, if you don't want the plugin, then you don't have to get it, but you're going to see me coding it today, right? So as soon as possible is the answer, but I'm not going to, it's not required. I mean, if you don't have it, it's not like you can't get the work done. It's just that I'll be coding faster than you. And it's only because it's going to say, hey, look, I can do this and I'm going to do it, right? And then you won't have that heads up, potentially, or I might refactor in a certain way and you won't be able to do it the exact same way. That's all the differences. You might have to do it a longer way or a different way. And we'll cover that. We'll talk about those things. If you say, no, I can't do that, then we'll talk about other ways to coding it by hand, right? So until you get that stuff. Okay. Any other questions at all around this stuff? I'm really excited to talk about this stuff with you. This is like coding, and especially coding for games is like passion for me, right? So this is something that should be passionate for you as well. But everyone's different and everyone goes to college for different things. And I know that Canadore, not just Canadore, but also other colleges, George Brown, Georgian College, wherever around, they all have different focuses. And sometimes, of course, a program might have, design as well as 3D graphics and those kind of things. Like, for example, I think you guys are learning Blender and stuff. Yeah. Am I wrong? Yeah. So, and that's good. And how much Blender have you guys done? Just a question. Are you guys good with Blender? Are you just learning it? Like, what are your what's your competency, would you say?
I'd say we're like still learning there, but we're getting like to be sort of decent, I think.
Okay. Are you guys okay, good. And are you guys some are a bit better than others? And when I say learning Blender, are you guys good with hard surface modeling? Are you guys good with organic modeling? Did you do a little bit of both? Mark says we're kind of decent. Okay. Like, you guys know all the shortcuts and all those kind of, like, are you comfortable with the tool? Like, or is this something that you just used it? Like, I don't know what level of competency. Still learning shortcut. All right. So what we may do, and again, it's not part of our course in whatsoever, but we may bring some stuff in from Blender to Unity at times. Okay. Advanced beginner, in my opinion. Okay. All right. So hopefully your Blender, whoever's teaching you the 3D graphic stuff, is or the graphic art stuff is good. One of the challenges I always find when you have students that start learning that tool, especially when they're programmers. So imagine you've got a split focus, right? You're doing 3D graphics, you're art I'm talking about, which is what Blender is, 3D art. You're doing programming, you're doing design, you're doing sound, you're doing different things, and that's good. But it's also it's not as focused. Let's say if you were completely in an art college and all you did was art the entire time. Like, for example, if you did game art and that was your main focus, then your competency would be different. So I just wanted to get a sense of, that's why I'm asking. And it's the same thing for programming. Sometimes when you have all these different, kind of channels of learning, then even your programming becomes a little bit diluted, because then you're doing this and you're doing that, you're doing the other thing, and then your programming isn't as strong as you would be if you were just doing programming the entire time. I personally think that the way you're doing it is good, because then you get a sense of all the things that make up game dev, the game dev industry. It's multidisciplinary. And when I talk to students that are not part of game dev, maybe just a computer studies program, I always tell them that game development is the hardest thing you can do. There's nothing harder than what you're doing, guys, right? And it doesn't matter if you're database programmers or whatever, maybe AI, machine learning, and I don't know, deep learning, those kind of things come close to the things that you need to do, because there's a lot of math, right? It's very mathy. But for the purposes of being good, and kind of understanding how to put together a game, it's really challenging because it's like, it's not just making it functional, but making it fun, right? So that's the kind of discussions we always have. So good. Okay, so you know a little bit of that too. Design, you guys should be doing some design work too. So things like understanding what a character is and how to build a game and all that stuff. And so I'm gonna assume some stuff, okay? And if my assumption is wrong, stop me. Say, nope, Tom, we didn't learn that. Or, you know what, we didn't do it that way. Or we haven't used this tool. Then I know where you're at. Again, I haven't taught at your college yet. So I don't know, you know, how everything interlinks. I mean, I see the program map, sure. But you know, I haven't, until I teach more of those courses, you know, I'm not going to know exactly how you guys are handling everything. Being online is weird too. Typically I'm used to some in-person contact with students, and being fully online, although I've been doing it for years. One thing to know about me is I have thousands of videos on YouTube that I've produced over the years with different courses, if you look me up. And you know, before the pandemic, before any of that stuff happened, I was already doing things. So this is the exact mode I use. I'm in person. I'll do Zoom, and I'll do YouTube, and I'll be in person all at the same time, all the time. That's what I do. Recording stuff is weird because I find that there's advantages and disadvantages to this. Positive things, you can use it for resources. You know, negative thing, you may not come to class because you're like, hey, I got the recording, I don't have to come to class. So there are times where in other programs, if we weren't fully online like this, for me, for this course, then I probably wouldn't record every single time. I would wait till, or I would record, but I wouldn't, you know, kind of publish the recording for you guys until like after the thing was due. So that way you'd come, right? Because coming to class and actually being part of this whole thing is way better than any recording that you're going to watch. You don't want to hear me talk for 3 hours on a recording. You'd rather do it with me, and sometimes you need it though. My students yesterday, that I was doing some Blender with them, and we were talking about just like, you know, making a very simple asset in Blender. They need the recording because no matter how slow I go, it's too fast for them, right? No matter how slow. And the reason for that is because I'm doing a transformation in Blender, and it's hard to do this the entire time. Watching while someone's transforming something or deforming an object is, you know, it's just crazy. So yeah, Blender is also great. I use it for 3D printing. I'm a big fan of that kind of stuff, especially since I'm a Warhammer 40K guy. So printing your own terrain, that kind of stuff. And Blender is great for that because it kind of shows you, there's some tools that are built in that tells you if the model that you're making is manifest or not. I know, it's crazy, eh? And I've got you know, lately, this is kind of a Christmas gift to me, from me, right? I got myself a resin printer, which is way different than, you know, the FDM type that kind of goes around like this. Doesn't do that. It kind of rises from this pool of like a vat of resin. So so it's nice, but it's also smelly, and I feel like a chemist, right? So because you got to put the mask on, the gloves, it's toxic. You got to have a fan on, you know, all these kind of things, right? So but the resolution is really awesome. And going back to the things we're talking about in with game dev, you make a model and you can actually see what it looks like, and you know, on like, you know, physically you can see that thing, right? Yeah, I like it, Justin, I do. But one thing I recommend, if you're going to go that route, maybe we can talk about it another time, is get yourself a wash and cure station as well, which is what I got. I didn't have it originally, and then as soon as I got it, I was like, oh my God, right? This is like the thing to get, right? It's a little expensive, but the whole thing, package in, wash and cure station, the 8K, you know, resolution 3D printer and everything else was under $1,000. So it's pretty good. And the great thing about the wash and cure station is it washes your model, removes all the excess resin, and then you cure it with UV light, which is pretty cool. And it turns out to be like solid, right? So it's really awesome. But anyways, we digress. Yeah, you can do that. You can do that kind of stuff too, but you can also just the printer that I have also has a bunch of filters on the back end as well, and then a fume remover, some kind of fume hood or remover or something like that that pipes everything outside. Is good. The garage always is better than inside, but it's cold right now for us, so not a great idea. Putting it in your basement, maybe not the best idea. That's where I have it, but I have a lot of ventilation, so I'm okay. You have to have room. You have to have space. If you don't have space, then a resin printer is best in a workshop more than anything else. And wear a mask, as I always say. But yeah, so Blender. So Blender is great because it'll allow us to make any asset we want. We can play around assets, and we can make complex assets to bring them into Unity. And the complex assets with something that has more polygons, as an example, than normal. Again, because we're dealing with something that's more complex, that has many more vertices, and we're trying to manipulate something like that in Unity. Even collision detection and response, those kind of things with the physics system becomes more computationally expensive. So we bring it in, and then we can use data structures and algorithms to make it something we can handle a little easier. All right, so that's kind of my intro to what the course is and that kind of stuff. But I wanted to talk about some requirements that I've kind of mentioned really quickly. One of them is this lab report thing. So lab reports, it's mandatory. And what lab reports do is every time we do a lab in-class exercise or assignment, anything like that we talk about when you're with me, if you have me again in some other course, I always use this standard. And what lab reports are is a short rubric of what needs to be done. Okay, so it's almost like it tells you where your marks are coming from, but what you're going to do is you're going to mark it. So you're not going to do my marking for me. You're going to mark yourself and say, this is the level of that I've accomplished. This is what I couldn't get done. So you're basically telling me, here's what I did, here's what I didn't do. And maybe you can always add some comments like why you couldn't complete it, if it was undoable or something. If I asked you to do something like that. So I wanted to share with you what the lab report looks like. And I have a lab report template that I'm going to pull up here that I've also shared with you on iLearn. Okay, so that's something that's up on the course shell, and I'll talk about the course shell in a second. They look like this. So it'll be something like lab report, GDD403, problem solving and data structures and algorithms. And then you'll see lab assignment. You'll put in your ICE, whatever it is. In this case, it's ICE 1. The date you submitted it, your name, last name, student ID, that kind of stuff. And then here's an example of a feature or task. So there are 4 levels of completion for this little thing. And a good example of this, added the ICE to a master repo, ensure both instructors, if I was working with somebody else, are collaborators. I will modify these tasks. Every task that I get you to do, if I ask you to do 5 things, they'll be all in here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and it'll be nicely listed what I'm looking for. And then all you need to do is just highlight the thing that makes sense for you. So for example, if you're like, well, I did this part really great, then you highlight it with a highlight color. And then you're going to make a short video. I know videos too, but we're online. And the short video is going to be 1 minute. You're going to say, hi, Tom, my name is, and this is a little video for in-class exercise 1 or whatever. And here's my lab report. I did all these things, and here's the demo. Bye-bye. Like that fast. Okay, I don't need to see code a lot of times, unless I ask for it specifically. I need to see results. So I may ask you to do something, and then the only way that you can do that properly is with code. So those are things that you're going to need to do. The lab report will be pre-done for you. I don't expect you guys to fill anything out like this, right? So again, I don't have it right now. We're going to do it together as we go. And then what's going to happen is when the lab report is filled out, then you just kind of choose which way you're going to have it. You can use Zoom to do it, Matthew. Zoom is a perfect way to record yourself, right? So because you can basically kind of go to YouTube if you want to, and directly. And I don't expect you to record your face. No facial recordings. What I want instead is just record your screen and your sound so I can hear you and see the screen. If I can do that, you're good to go. Okay, there should be no issues with that stuff at all. Anyone can be able to do that. However, you do need some kind of mic. You do need it, and all of you have that. I can see that here. And you need to be able to do a screen recording. Barring that, if you don't want to use Zoom, you can always use OBS, which we'll be talking about right now. So, did you guys ever use OBS to record anything?
I've used it in the past, like just personally there, but it wasn't like something that we were taught or whatever.
Yeah, it's not, again, it's not crazy to install. Like literally it's a few clicks and you're already recording. So OBS is what I'm talking about here. So this is a pretty good tool. Again, you can use anything you want. You know, to screen record is what I'm talking about when I say record. It's cross-platform, and it's pretty good. So when you download it for Windows, you literally just, you know, kind of use your screen. There's a lot of tutorials online on how to do it if you want to use OBS. And literally, yeah, so the alternative, Mark, would be if it's not, you know, OBS, you can use Zoom to do it, like we're doing right now. You can use Zoom to record everything. And then you can connect Zoom to YouTube, right? Where I recommend you kind of populate all of your recordings and make them unlisted. You don't have to make them public so that people see them. Just make them unlisted. So the only person that can see it is me, right? So as long as you give me the link, I'm good to go, right? So again, if you don't want to install anything and you already have Zoom installed, hopefully you do have Zoom installed on your system and you're not on Zoom on the web, then you're good to go. You can record your sessions the way you like, no problems. All right, so we'll come back to this. When you record, again, things that I'm going to be looking for, and this is, I'm going to go back to the assignment video thing, is all videos, you have to make videos for everything you do for me, right? So again, we're not seeing each other face to face. I'm not with you in person. So videos are a great way of, you know, maintaining academic integrity, but also a great way of you doing almost like a little oral exam every single time you hit an assignment or a little in-class exercise. So this week will be the first one you do. And because it's going to be an in-class exercise. So one of the things you're going to be working with is, hey, I'm going to talk about, you know, what I'm working on. And I just want you to use your own words, no fancy terms or anything else like that. I don't need you to script it or make it fancy. There's no post-processing. I don't need you to make, you're not going to be a video editor at the end of this or anything else like that. But video and the lab reports for in-class exercise are mandatory. Okay, so that means if you don't submit those things, 0. Okay, so you need those things. And when you do it, things that I will be looking for when you do a video is I recommend a single slide of a PowerPoint deck. It's not a PowerPoint. I don't want you to be make a huge PowerPoint. Nope, one slide. It's a title card. You put an image of you, current image of you. You can get that from, you know, if you want to use your student ID, or if you want to take a picture of yourself against a wall with your smartphone or something else like that, as long as I can see you and it's not you looking like a clown or or you're not going to use an avatar or some kind of emoji or something weird. It's got to be your image. Black and white is fine. It doesn't have to be you know, thing. It's like a mugshot if you want to say, but it could be a happy image as well, right? It doesn't have to take up the whole screen. It could be just like one part of the screen. As long as I can see it and it represents you, that's good. A firm image of you. And if I ever get you to do partner work, your partners would be included in there as other mugshots. You must include your full name, student ID, course code, course name, and all that stuff that what you're going to be doing. Now here, if you're doing an assignment video, 5 to 10 minutes max. All right. Sometimes for assignments, we need to do more details. I may need you to run through a scene with me in Unity, or I may need you to show me that it's working in WebGL, or I may need you to do whatever, right? So it might take a few minutes for you to go through everything, and I don't want to limit you. But for in-class exercises, those should be quick and dirty, 1 minute. Hi, my name is, here's my title card. This is my lab report. Here's what you asked me to do, Tom. See you later. Fast. Like, I don't want you guys to take a lot of time doing it. It doesn't have to be, you know, like I said, perfect. As long as I see those things, you're going to be good to go. And it's going to be good for you because you're going to be talking through the things that we're doing together, which is like I said, an oral exam. Talking about it is going to make you better at understanding it. Okay, so that's what it's going to be. All right, so that is assignment videos, that they're also important. Okay, so things we just covered. We covered the course description. We covered our course outline. We covered evaluations. We covered lab requirements and video demonstration requirements. Those are all things we covered. Any questions before we move on, or concerns? Right. So I want to make sure that you're not, it doesn't bug you. So that's the admin stuff. We have to get through the admin stuff first, and then we can do the fun stuff. Right. So So stuff we're going to cover this week. What's an algorithm? What's a data structure? I know it's just fundamental stuff. And you're going to be like, Tom, we've been using algorithms and data structures since the first day. I know, but we're going to cover it anyway. And what is big O notation? And we're going to kind of talk about a timing class, a potential timing class we're going to use. Tools installations and all that kind of stuff is what I asked you guys to do. And things that are due is in class exercise 1 is due this Sunday at midnight. And assignment 1 is due week 5. But before we get to any of that stuff, and we'll take a short break after this, is I want to go to our course shell. So the course shell looks like this right now. Let me get through it with you a little bit. So where it says course orientation start here, it talks about welcome to the course, meet me, a little bit about me, some expectations for you, for me to you, what I expect you, expect you to do. It's all there in terms of its, basic stuff about me as your professor and you as a student and what do I expect you to do. It's all there. Course outline is up online. So if you ever don't know what's coming next, unless we say otherwise, or unless we change something, then the course outline and schedule is right here in your course shell. So you can see that all the same stuff we talked about is right here. You can always access it the entire time. You can see what we're talking about and the order of events anyway, okay? If we add anything or if we subtract it, I may or may not include it here, but I may include it on the PowerPoint slide deck, right? But for the most part, this is going to be the topical outline for this semester. In other semesters, I would definitely have week 1 and 2, and I would spread some stuff out differently. But in this semester, we're doing it this way. Okay, there's also the course outline. So the course outline is the official outline that's distributed by the college. That's right here. Okay, so that's there. And there's also in the course outline part, the evaluation scheme, like we talked about. So if you ever want to know where all the marks are coming from, it's right here. Okay, so it talks about that. It talks about how you're going to be assessed and so on and everything else. That's how you're doing it right there. And in the table of contents, we're going to have our week 3, all the stuff that we talked about today is going to be here and more. And you can see here, this is the live recording, and I'm just going to put that as a separate section, which I should have. We'll call this live session from now on. And the live session will include this live recording, which I'm doing right now. So all the live sessions will be here. This is all the recordings will be under the live session section, right? So you'll have part 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever it's going to be. Okay, that's going to be here. So you can always look back, and if you have a question or you forgot what it said, you can go back here for reference. That's really what these are for. Okay. It'll be published every single week as we go forward. And then at the end, you'll have all the course recordings. You can also access the course recording later on YouTube because that's exactly what I'm doing right now. I'm actually on YouTube with you. One thing to note is my stuff is unlisted for this course, and you won't be able to find it if you search for it unless you have either the playlist or if you have the actual link. And that's what I recommend for you when you produce your little videos for me. I recommend YouTube. It's very simple. You don't have to show your face, like I said, like I'm doing now. It's not required. But I do need to see that title slide for hi, my name is, and this is me, and this is what I'm doing, and blah blah, and then do the next part. Okay, so I do need that. Okay, so I'm also going to put in as much information as we can in these sections. So you'll see this our course build out every week. There'll be more and more stuff that is available to you, and your job as a student is just to, if you miss something, you missed a class, you came late, or whatever, please go through the documentation, the things that I've asked you to, because in some form it'll be asked for from you during the midterm test and the final test. The midterm test and the final test are not cumulative, which means that I don't expect to, the final test to be a big final test about everything, but it kind of is, because we build every single week, we build on the previous week, right? So, the final test, the only way you can be successful is if you're participating every single week that we're here, doing your homework, submitting your in-class exercises, all that stuff. And usually what I do with the midterm and final test is I give you the project we've been working on as a starter. So I say, look, here's the project we've been working on, modify this, add this, change this, whatever, add whatever, right? So that's how I do it. And so if you've never worked on it, or if you haven't done your in-class exercise, first of all, that's like academic suicide, because each in-class exercise is 4% of your final grade, right? But let's suppose you just, I don't know, just do them and you know, you just want to get through them and stuff like this. Again, when it comes down to your midterm test, which is for 15% of your final grade, it will have an impact, okay? All right, so that is the course orientation. I think I've talked for about an hour. I don't know about you, but for me, it's time for a short break. Let's take 5. And before we get actually into the lecture part, I want to switch out and do all the installations first and everything else and check to see how your Unity's going and all that stuff. And then we'll get back into the lecture piece to break it up. Because again, I'm not a fan of PowerPoints, and I'm sure you guys aren't either, right? So, so let's take 5. We're sitting at 9:32. Let's say around 9:40. It's a bit more than 5. We'll come back. If you want to grab a coffee or go to the washroom, do whatever you have to do, come back. And then we come back and we'll get into more stuff with Unity and everything. So, okay, so hang tight. I'm going to stop recording this one, and then we'll get do the next part in like I said, 9:40.